Hey, we want to welcome you to the Simeon Moultrie podcast. This is our third episode, and we're excited about what has happened in the last 2 weeks. We want to thank you for the feedback, for all the love you've shown. And listen, we want you to share this with as many people as possible because we want to be able to create content that will help you become the best version of yourself. And I'm honored to have with me today, who's been a part of our podcast for the last two episodes, and that is Sean Dreer. What's up, Sean? How you feeling?
What's up? Episode 3.
Yeah, we here. We are here. And today we got a special topic. I think it's going to be a really good one. We are talking about self-management, which is a major piece because a lot of people are trying to figure out how to be productive, how to do life, how to be efficient, and how to be effective. And in order for you to really do that, you have to have a level of not just management, but self-management. So what are your thoughts on this particular subject?
Man, I think it's absolutely important, especially given the conversation that we had in our last episode about self-awareness. So I just want to make sure that people just joining the conversation, that they understand kind of how we got here. So you started the series at the church about greatness. And so what does it look like to be great?
Right.
And so we realized that no matter how much, everybody tells us you can be great. We start hearing in elementary school, you can be great, you can be whatever you want to be. But then as you get older, you discover that there's some things that could keep you from being great.
Right.
And so last week we talked about this idea of self-awareness and who am I?
Right.
What are my tendencies? How do I tend to show up? Those kinds of things. And so the next natural progression after self-awareness is now I have to take that information and I have to use it to manage myself effectively.
Right. Which I think is important because in order for you to be self-aware, there has to be tools given to you to help you identify where your strengths are, your weaknesses, your opportunities. I feel like I'm about to talk about the SWOT analysis. And if some of you don't know what the SWOT analysis is SWOT. Yeah, that's it, right? SWOT, right. So it's strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so those assessments allow you to see where your strengths are, your weaknesses, opportunities for growth, and what threats are, not just for organization, but for yourself. And I think sometimes what will help some people run their lives differently is if they saw themselves as a business. Some people run a business, but some people, they are the business. And so everything they do is with that mindset and that framework that I am the business.
Right.
So assessments that you can take, we have talked about this a little bit offline. Let me open up my phone quickly to get some of these assessments. But some of you may know about the DISC assessment, DISC assessment. That is a good one that you can use. The Enneagram assessment, that's a really, really good one as it relates to your personality type.
Yes.
Of course, you have the Myers-Briggs. And then you told me about the Clifton assessment done by Gallup.
Yes. Some people know that StrengthsFinder.
Yeah, so you have different assessments. Some of these assessments may cost, some may be free, but it's worth the investment because you have a non-bias.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
A non-biased point of view to let you see where you are strong and where you are weak and where there are opportunities and where there are threats. Now, if you're in ministry, there's another assessment tool you can take is assessme.org, which is a phenomenal tool. There is a fee to it, but I took it. It's a phenomenal assessment on who you are, how you're kind of wired, because the self-awareness piece is extremely important when you do the assessments to see where you are, right?
Yes.
But now that you have the information,
yes,
what do we do with that?
Yes. So now that you have the information, you take that information and you use it as a tool to help you not only to grow, but help you to, as you navigate some of the challenges of the things you discover in the self-awareness piece, you're able to put yourself in a position where your strengths are able to shine and your weaknesses aren't able to get in the way of those strengths.
Right, because some people, it's bad when you have someone who think they're good at something.
Yes.
And they're not.
And they're not. Man.
It's you're trying to tell them like you really don't do this well. Like I tell people in the church all the time, the Lord loves to hear you sing, but everyone doesn't.
Yes.
Right? Because whatever you sing, and it has to be enjoyable to the hearer, not to your heart. Right? So we need to make sure that you are good.
Yes.
In the things that you are really good at, not what you think you're good at. Right. So one of the things about self-assessment and taking this information to apply it, I think it's important for us to understand self-management.
Yes.
And the one thing that I've learned is that you manage everything in your life the way you manage yourself.
Man, that's good.
Right. So that's why earlier I said there's some people who see themselves as the business.
Yes.
And when you have this perspective, you just make decisions differently because it's about profits and loss. It's about gains and losses. It's about, is this good for the organization or not good for the organization? And you begin to make different decisions, maybe from someone else who just doesn't see their life that way. So if we could get people to see that maybe the reason why you make these decisions the way you do is because it's the way you see yourself.
Right.
And you have to manage you before you can manage anything else.
Yes. You have to manage you. And I think that's the part that people miss. So there are people who would listen to the conversation we had last time about self-awareness. And we all of us have heard people say, this is just who I am.
Right.
So they get in the self-awareness piece and they think that information is just for information purposes. So they're able to say, oh, this is just me. And it's like, yeah, but that version of you is unproductive.
Right.
So how do you take the information from the self-awareness piece and then use it in a way that helps you to navigate certain spaces? So even with emotions, being able to know in this moment, I'm angry. So what do I need to do? Maybe I need to back away from this situation. Maybe I need to think. So even with conversation, there are some people who are like, oh, we're going to talk about this right now. And then there's some people who are like, nah, I need a minute.
Right.
And you got to know based on what you gathered out of the self-assessment piece or what you gathered from self-awareness to know when you need a moment versus, no, I can address this in the moment. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Like I got to talk later. I had to process because, me just off the top of my head, I might say something that comes out wrong that now I have to come back and fix. So now I'm trying to do two things versus if I waited later, I could just address the one thing. Yeah, and I really think too with someone saying this is who I am, I think the question is, where do you see yourself going?
Yeah.
And that determines what you have to do to become who you need to become for where you're going. Because more than likely, if we're honest, where you're going isn't where, of course, it's not where you are now, but it may require a different kind of you.
Yes.
And do you know what's necessary for you to do that? Now, I want to be transparent because we want this podcast to provide insight, not just a bunch of information. So somebody on the other side can say, now he talking my language.
Yes.
So we talked about how we both are introverts.
Absolutely.
Both are introverts. However, our calling makes us look like extroverts.
Absolutely.
Now, I can walk into a room and not talk to anyone. But that doesn't work for where I am because it's important for me to have the proper relationships for my assignment. So then I have to manage my emotions and what makes me uncomfortable to walk into rooms and do what I need to do so that I can fulfill my purpose. And the question everyone has to ask is, are you willing to be uncomfortable to become who you need to become in the next chapter of your life?
That is so good. Because like you said, so many times we get in this space where we just want to do the thing that comes natural to us. And you get in a season where God's like, Nah, that's not gonna work. You're gonna have to come up. You're gonna have to do more. You're gonna have to be more, and it can be challenging at times when you're confronted with that information. So as we navigate this space, so the more you became self-aware, what is one thing? So in your journey, in your self-awareness, in your discovery phase, what's one thing that you discovered about yourself that you needed, that has helped you in the season that you are currently in? So now that you look at this season, what thing can you point at and say, I'm glad I know that about myself because I need it now?
That's a big question. I think for me, it was knowing or identifying what real health looked like. Because you have different types. You have physical health, you have mental health, social health, emotional health, relational health. We have all of these different areas of your life. And I think for me, it was when I could identify that I was making bad decisions when I was running closer to E. And then I began to pay closer attention to what was in my tank. To know, I can't meet with you this week. My tank is low. Or I can't have that conversation right now because I'm gonna say something that I'm gonna regret.
Right.
So I think being self-aware, but for me, I think it was really more about knowing where my tank is, and I'll go a little deeper. Okay. So what happened with me was, pre-pandemic, for anyone who knows about our ministry knows that we were doing 4 services on Sunday. Jeez. Then we were launching a Charlotte campus that we were doing every other Monday night that we were getting ready to make official before March 2020. Well, I had my day down to a science on Sunday to get that done. So I would run and be on close to E, right? So then I would get maybe to a half tank and I felt I was good enough. And then I would do something else and would cap out early because I kept running to the half tank. I'm good, getting on E. And I was like, why can't I just do what I need to do and go the distance? When I realized that when you get used to just driving on a half a tank, it affects how far you can go. So then it made me realize there is more I need to do to refuel so I can go the distance. So some people right now are listening and they're saying, oh my God, that's why I tap out so fast. Yeah, because you were on E, you got enough gas to get to the next thing, but then you're on E again. The question is, what does full look like? What does full look like, right? Yes. So when you realize what full looks like and what healthy looks like, now you know what you need to do to get back to that place so you can be your best self, because you're not your best self half full.
Yes.
I would even say this, assessment wise, I started looking at myself like a car. Now, let me explain this. You have different types of cars. You have a smaller car that drives on 87 and gives you 27 miles to the gallon. Then you have an SUV that takes 87 but only gives you 18 miles a gallon. Then you have another SUV that takes premium gas. That's 93. So just the gas alone is going to cost you more. Now, when you understand the type of car you are, you not only know how large your tank is, you know the type of gas it takes. And for some people, to fill up costs more.
Yes.
It could be the same size tank, but if I'm using premium and someone else is using unleaded, I'm going to spend more money just to fill up. So some people, the investment into yourself is going to cost more because they're not the type of car you are, or they're not the type of person you are. You know, like an 18-wheeler,
Right.
They pull in weight, but they have diesel fuel. So just the fuel itself,
Right.
the engine itself requires you to operate differently. If you know how you're wired, now you know how much it takes to fill you up.
Yes.
You know how far you can go. Now you know where you can say yes and where you can say no.
Yes.
Now you know where you can commit and where you can't, because we overcommit ourselves.
Yes.
And
All
then
the
we
time.
don't have the gas to get there.
Yes.
So when you begin to say, hey, I know what I can do, it helps you. You feel better about yourself, because now you're not only aware and assessing, now you're managing your life, because you know what you can do and what you can't.
Yes. And that's why it's called self-management, because I think what happens sometimes is we are waiting on other people to get the revelation about the things we need, when sometimes we have to get it, because us getting it will help other people to get it. So we're waiting on other people to see that we're tired. We're waiting on other people to see that we're overwhelmed. We're waiting on other people to see, and they're not going to see it. As long as we can still function, to your point about being half full, as long as we can still function, people are going to still make demands. They're still going to ask. They're still going to call. They're still going to have needs. They're still going to have issues. So it takes us managing ourselves, but you can't manage yourself until you know yourself, and then take that information and use it to, you know, put together schedules, know when your energy's high, when your energy's low, when you're at your best, those kinds of things. That helps. I mean, we out here buying journals and all kind of other stuff, and, you know, journals are great, but if you don't know how to manage yourself, you're just going to have a journal full of stuff that you're not going to be able to accomplish, because you don't even know how to get the best out of you.
Right. And I think too, what we have to come to the realization of is that some people, I wrote this down. People apply information where they want transformation.
Yes.
And if I get it, I want to know so I can change in this area. But it's hard to make that change when you constantly have to be inspired. Inspiration is needed, but that can't be the main thing that pushes you and drives you. I need to be inspired. I need to be motivated. I need motivation. I need motivational speeches, and I need all that. It's good and it's needed at times. But when you are really trying to make a difference, you have to be self-motivated. That's why you got the self-assessment. And this is why you're now doing self-management. Not that God is not in the equation, not that he's not a part of your life, but there is a personal responsibility that we all have in managing ourselves. Now, I want to say something, and I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
We both talk about this and how you have to get a rhythm or find a rhythm, and you have to have a schedule. What are some of the things you had to do to be your best self?
So I had to learn to value my values. So one of my mentors asked us this question. He said, are your proclaimed values your actual priorities? And I was like, huh? And he said, everybody, if you ask them, what do you value? They're going to tell you, oh, I value this, I value this, I value that. He says, okay, then look at your actual priorities. How many of those priorities reflect the things you say you value? And so when I did the exercise and really sat down, I was like, man, the stuff that matters to me, it doesn't show up in my priorities. And so for me, something like working out consistently. So I knew I had to get up early because I wanted to make sure I did rain, sleet, or snow. I wanted to make sure I did. So I had to get up early. I had to give up sleep. I had to, you know, it's better for me to study at a certain time. It's better for me to read at a certain time in terms of being able to retain information. So that value exercise really helped me to lean into that, because I was saying that things were important to me. But then when I looked at how I was actually managing my life, the stuff that I said was important to me, it wasn't actually showing up every day.
So would you say that you found out that you were a hypocrite?
Absolutely.
So oftentimes we look at hypocritical in the sense of being, oh, somebody doing a life and they judging me and all this. But sometimes we have to understand that we play the hypocrite, right, to ourselves, because, sometimes it's even easier to work out. But when you're on planes and you're traveling and you're making moves and you're in and out of town, and the time you would work out, you're on a plane or you're in an airport or you're in a meeting, trying to still make your health a priority is a major deal. That's why when we were doing the 4 services, one of the things I had to do, I had to work out, but one of the things I had to increase was my cardio. Mm-hmm. So I had to run because I had to physically do the job. And so even coming up with the schedule to even what I would eat, trying to figure out. So I would have oatmeal before the 8. I would eat grits, eggs, and turkey bacon to take me to the second and third service. And then I just did all sugar. The last service is all, strawberries, pineapples, apples, all fruit. And then after that 4th service, I would crash from all the sugar. But I had a system, and then I would rest, for the rest of the day. But what it takes to do it takes management and discipline. And many people lack discipline to become who they feel they're supposed to become, because you don't get it from desire, you get it from discipline.
Absolutely. Listen, this has been an amazing conversation, because I think this is one of the most overlooked skills ever. Yeah. And really, if we're going to become all that God wants us to be, we have to. So even if you're not a person of faith, if you're going to maximize your life, because we don't just want to use spiritual language, we may have people who listen to who are not spiritual. Right. If you want to maximize your life, you cannot maximize your life without the skill of self-management. Because if you can't manage your emotions, if you can't control your, we've seen so many people with great skill not be able to manage themselves properly. So they get to a certain place in their professional development that their personal development doesn't allow them to maintain, because you take you everywhere you go. So at some point you got to be able to manage you, because if you can't, it's going to be hard to even enjoy the things that we get in terms of fruit and labor.
It's funny to hear people say, if I moved to another city, my life would be different. It's like, no, it wouldn't. You would just have access to maybe some restaurants or maybe some shopping, but it's still you. So you take you with you. And if your mind is bad in this location, it will be bad in the next location. So listen, we have more to say, but we're just out of time. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take a pause. And from here, and we probably have to pick this subject back up, but we want to, number one, say thank you for hanging out with us again. We hope that what we said helped to some degree in self-management. It's more to cover. It's more to talk about. We may even come back to this. I think might be a really good conversation. But listen, we want to say thank you for hanging out with us today. Yes. Listen, go to SimeonMoultrie.com. I'm uploading resources, starting blogs. My calendar is going to be there. I have a few events coming up. And I have some courses that I'm going to be creating that's going to be there as well.
Let's go courses.
So, yeah, we just want to be able to share to help you become the best version of yourself. So, listen, until next week, have a good one. And we pray you have a phenomenal week. Peace.
Peace.